What if I told you that the moment that made an entire stadium scream a player's name almost never happened at all? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll never look at the quiet, invisible, waiting in your own life the same way again. There was a young man named Marcus who arrived at the club at 19 with 2 bags, a pair of worn-out boots, and a belief so enormous it barely fit through the doorway with him. He had been scouted from a small town nobody had heard of, offered a contract nobody in his family fully understood, and told that if he worked hard enough, this place would make him. So he worked. He arrived to training before the groundskeepers unlocked the gates. He stayed long after the floodlights switched off. He studied footage of the players ahead of him, memorizing their tendencies, their weaknesses, the precise weight they put on their left foot before cutting right. He did everything right. And he sat on the bench, week after week, month after month, season after season. The other substitutes came and went. Some got their chances, grabbed them, became regulars. Some faded. Some were sold on. Marcus watched all of it from the same seat, with the same foam shin pads tucked under the same side of the bench. The crowd did not know his name. That was perhaps the hardest part. You can almost bear the waiting when the world at least knows you exist. But there is a specific kind of invisibility that comes from being dressed in the same kit as the players on that pitch and still not mattering to anyone watching. He was furniture. He was a background detail. He was the name on the team sheet that even the commentators skipped over. His phone told the full story every time he opened it, messages from friends back home. Have you played yet? When are we going to see you? His mother, careful with her words, asking how he was sleeping. His father, less careful, wondering aloud whether the coaches even knew what they had. An old teammate, now working a normal job in their hometown, texting him twice a year with a friendly version of, "You still doing that thing?" 3 years. 3 years of warming up on the sideline, feeling his heart rate climb, watching the clock, believing that today might be the day, and then hearing the final whistle, pulling his vest back on, and going home to do it all again. He never stopped preparing. That part is important. He could have quietly scaled back. He could have told himself that a man training at full intensity for a game he never plays is a man performing for an empty theater. He could have let the hunger dull itself, just enough to stop hurting. He didn't. And he couldn't tell you exactly why. It was less a decision than a reflex. He just kept showing up as if the next session might be the last one before everything changed. Now, here's where the story shifts. Because on an ordinary Tuesday evening, not a cup final, not a derby, not any match that would typically carry the weight of legend, something happened that nobody in that stadium had planned for. With 20 minutes left on the clock, his team losing by a single goal, one of the starting forwards pulled up clutching his hamstring. The manager turned to his technical staff. Something passed across his face that wasn't quite an expression, more like a calculation completing itself. He looked down the bench. He said Marcus's name. And here's the moment nobody sees when they replay what happened next. The moment between hearing your name and standing up. That fraction of a second where 3 years of everything. The empty stands during early morning sessions, the phone messages, the invisible uniform, the swallowed disappointment, the muscle memory built from thousands of repetitions in front of no one, where all of it compresses into something that isn't quite calm, but functions like it. Marcus stood up. His legs were not shaking. That surprised him. He had always imagined, in the quiet way that you imagine things you don't fully believe will ever happen, that his legs would be shaking. They were not. His legs knew exactly what to do. His legs had been ready for a very long time. He entered the pitch in the 68th minute of a match his team was losing. In the 74th minute, a cross came in from the right. The kind of cross that gives you about half a breath to make a decision. Marcus had watched hundreds of crosses like this one from the bench. He had watched how the defenders positioned, where the goalkeeper's weight went, the precise gap that opened and closed in the space of a heartbeat. He knew where to be before the ball left the winger's foot. He met it with the outside of his right boot, redirected it into the bottom corner, and the net moved. The stadium, which had not known his name an hour earlier, learned it in the next 30 seconds. The announcer called it. The crowd repeated it. His teammates ran to him from every corner of the pitch. He stood in the middle of all of it and felt something so large and so quiet he could not yet name it. They held on for the draw. Not a victory. A draw. And yet something about that mattered more, not less, because he had not arrived to rescue a fairy tale. He had arrived to do his job, and he had done it. After the final whistle, he did not run to the supporters first. He did not lift his shirt or point at the badge. He found one specific section of seats and he pointed up at it. His parents were there. His mother was crying before he even found her in the crowd. His father, who had never once told him to quit but whose silences had sometimes felt that way, had both fists raised above his head. 3 years. For this. Here's what Marcus told a journalist a few months later. When they finally ran the profile, nobody had wanted to write while he was still anonymous. He said, "I used to think the waiting was time being taken from me. I thought every day on that bench was a day I was losing. But now I think the waiting was the job. I just didn't know it yet. You can't borrow that preparation from somewhere else. You either build it quietly, in the dark, when no one is watching, or you don't have it when the moment comes." That is the part nobody talks about when they talk about breakthrough moments. They talk about the cross, the goal, the name over the PA system. They don't talk about the years of invisible work that made the 68th minute possible. They don't talk about the person who showed up first and left last and did everything right while the world kept asking him when he was going to quit. The waiting is not wasted time. The preparation nobody applauds is exactly the preparation that carries you when everything finally counts. Your moment may not come when you expect it. It may come on an ordinary Tuesday, in a match nobody thought would matter, with 20 minutes left on a clock you have been watching from the wrong side for 3 years. But it will only come for the person who stayed ready, not the person who gave up quietly, not the person who let the hunger dull to avoid the pain of it, the one who kept preparing for a chance that had not arrived yet. So if you are in the waiting right now, if you are the name nobody is calling, the person in the background, the one still showing up despite every reasonable argument to stop, I want you to remember Marcus. I want you to remember that quiet fraction of a second on the bench before he stood up. And I want you to ask yourself, when your name gets called, will your legs already know what to do? Drop a comment and tell me about a moment in your own life when preparation finally met its chance. I want to hear it. And if this story sat with you, subscribe, because next week I have another one that might matter even more.